And it's a big night of football talk for us here on the Red Gold and Bold podcast. With you, as always, from the NFL Network, NFL.com, Jeff Chadiha. Eric Eager from Pro Football Focus. Find his work at PFF.com. My name is Soren Petro. You can see my work at 810WHB.com. And jam-packed Red Gold and Bold coming your way here today, as we have many a topic to get to. The offense has been impressive for the Kansas City Chiefs. Are you ready to buy in? How confident are you in this offense? Could it be better without Tyreek Hill? Are you ready to say it will be better than it was with Tyreek Hill? Are the running backs a problem for this team? Is the shine off on Isaiah Pacheco? Ronald Jones does or doesn't make the team? Derek Gore hits the IR. Running backs in the last two games, 30 carries for just 45 yards. How big a problem is the run game? JuJu Smith-Schuster is barking. His knee is barking at him, and he remains out. Jody Fortson, though, we have a Jody Fortson bandwagon, and who wants to drive it? George Karlaftis certainly looks like the real deal. Does anybody want to call their shot on him? And then maybe some prize cuts and keepers for the Kansas City Chiefs. Let's get to it. We start with you, Jeff. Do you want to stamp the Jeff Chadiha seal of approval on this offense and declare it will be better than it was before, than it was with Tyreek Hill? Jeff, you're muted here. Hang on. I think we didn't check. We got to get Jeff's we'll start with Eric while Jeff gets his audio.
Chiefs fans know that this was going to be, it was going to be tempered as far as Chadiha's response here. So I'm going to throw the fastball right down the middle to our lovely listeners. I think for those of us that were positive on the move to begin with, which was, I think all three of us were quite positive on the move to a certain extent. These things, what we're seeing is somewhat predictable. I think that the only thing that is troubling for us right now as Chief observers, and in the case of Petro fans, is that the running backs are not doing much in the running game, even though the offensive line appears to be doing well, run blocking, producing holes. The wide receivers are doing, I think, good. Justin Watson's somebody that none of us really figured into the mix. Marquez Valdez-Scantling has had moments. I think he's still inconsistent the way he was in Green Bay. JuJu's been injured. There are even right now, not everything is going perfectly. You're still getting injuries from JuJu. You're still getting inconsistency from Marquez Valdez-Scantling. And you're still seeing the offense hum. And you're seeing Mahomes, he's playing very cranky right now, which he looks pretty dialed in. So I'm optimistic, but I was optimistic when they traded Hill that they could manufacture this.
Jeff, we got you.
You got me now?
Yeah, we got you now. Got you off the mute. What do you think? Are you ready to say that it will be better without Tyreek Hill? Not because Tyreek Hill's gone, just that this offense, which has been very impressive, 3 drives, 3 touchdowns with the first unit out there, that this offense, through adding other people, through new schemes, whatever it is just going to be better.
I've always said better is not a great word. That I don't use that word. I think different is the right word. I think it will be comparable in terms of there are things about this offense that we never really get into because it was so explosive in the past. They were able to put up a lot of points, but certainly down the red zone, what I've liked is how they've used Jody Fortson. They needed to have some bigger targets down there, and you've seen Mahomes, what it can do for him when he has somebody who's got that big frame. I know Travis is a big guy, but you need somebody else down there. Marquez Valdez-Scantling could bring that as well. JuJu obviously brings it. So I think once you're down inside the 20-yard line, the 30-yard line, and you're not throwing 75-yard bombs, you become a lot more effective. And I think as much as we've talked about, we'll talk about the run game and where that is. I like the idea of like a power passing game. I like the idea of having guys who can catch passes underneath, break tackles, who can get 50-50 balls for you. Certainly we've seen the distribution be impressive, the trust Mahomes has in these players, the work they did in the offseason, that's showing up on the field at this point. You don't want to put too much stuff, into preseason games, but the commitment to it so far and the results have been impressive.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt. And if you just are buying on the fact that Andy Reid is going to make the adjustments, I think he was doing the last couple of years, how, maybe I'll ask this question. I'll ask it to both of you, Eric. How much do you think the last couple of years the Chiefs offense was just still doing what it had done in, say, 2018 because nobody had caught up to him? Now somebody finally caught up to him, and Andy Reid has the reason to go make it better.
Right. We would go and we would watch games like the Ravens game in 2020 where they were doing basically the same stuff, but you had that little like shovel pass to Anthony Sherman, right? Or you would see wrinkles, but you would not see fundamental regime shifts in this offense and you have to have that now, right? Like I think the Chiefs developed such a great like right hand if we're thinking about basketball. And the whole league said, okay, but you got to play with your left hand. And it was very similar. Like, I don't know. I don't know if you guys remember this, but like there was this interview with Shane Battier early in the NBA analytics, movement where, they were like, well, what does the analytics do for you? And it's like, Shane Battier is like, I found out from one of our staff members that if I can make Kobe Bryant shoot after a left-handed dribble, he shoots this percentage, and that's 1.5% less than league average. So I can get one of the best players to ever play the game. And if I can force him to do this, he becomes below average. I like that comment, by the way.
By the way,
Soren
I'm pretty
Petro
sure I can't see the picture close enough, but I'm pretty sure I went to college with him. So
okay. Soren Petro is one of the most knowledgeable sports commentators that I know. But like the NFL defense has found a way for the Chiefs to shoot jump shots off of left-handed dribbles, right? That's what they were doing. And instead, and so, the sort of analogy is that, Kobe Bryant could learn how to be a better jump shooter off a left-handed dribble, but he's still like, if he gets 1.5% better, he's only league average, right? And so, and that's kind of how I saw the Chiefs last year was like the whole league was getting them to throw shorter passes. The whole league was getting them to try to run the football. And over time, like they got 1.5% better at that stuff, and that got them to the AFC title game again. But long term, it's just better to make it to reinvent your game, right? And then I think this offseason they reinvented their game. They're playing right-handed again. It's just a different right hand.
It's Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid's show, right? And so the idea that any one of the other interchangeable parts would somehow doom the team to not being able to achieve at the level it did. I think on down the road, if, they're not able to keep finding playmakers, right? If Sky Moore's, if they end up with a bunch of McCole Hardmans, at some point they got to find dynamic guys. But there's no doubt when Patrick Mahomes is there, they have the opportunity to be very good, right? Like it all starts right there. Andy Reid scheming at Patrick Mahomes, making it happen. Then you're in a good spot, right? When you start from that point. And I do think that, necessity is the mother of invention. Jeff, I think when, you finally, and you talked about it last year a lot to the chagrin of some fans about how they've been figured out a little bit. I think what I kind of wonder, and if Andy Reid had ever let anybody in, I don't think he will, but maybe somebody from his inner circle will talk, is his brilliance. Cause I kind of feel like this is what I say when people ask me, I was on in DC before the last preseason game. And so why is Andy Reid so good? And I said, well, I think it's his off season, right? Like I think his brilliance, a lot of his brilliance comes from his off season. And so I think when he didn't make the adjustments, a lot more of the week to week game plan is in now than people may realize, right? That now is when he's the mad scientist. And, week of game, there's only so much time and so much you can tinker with. And so I think until somebody presents him with the next challenge, the next thing to overcome, he's not in the lab creating it. We saw it, the cover two. Let's see if the Chiefs don't unleash something that just, we go, oh my God, he's destroying this defense. Everybody played the shell, the cover two, and you've talked about it, Jeff, better than I think than anybody else I've heard about a cover two is not a cover two every time, right? There's different ways to play it. There's nuances to it. And they're always evolving, getting more complicated, getting more advanced. But this was the vogue defense when, the Tampa 2 was around, and it went away because teams learned to beat it. My assumption is that will happen again. And I think it's a pretty good bet that Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes will be the guy to do it.
Well, look, the secret to beating cover two is running the football. That's always going to be secret. It's real simple. If the safety's sitting 15, 20 yards back, you're running. If he's up across the line of scrimmage, near the line of scrimmage, you throw it. I mean, there's a lot more things that you can do, certainly when you have a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, but that's the simple thing to it. And when you look at some of their struggles against cover two, specifically last year's playoff loss and the Super Bowl loss to Tampa, in both cases, if they're running the football more consistently in those situations, they probably have better chances of winning those games. But it's, I understand what you're saying, that when you have a great quarterback and a great head coach, they trump a lot of things, and they do. I mean, I agree with you on that. But I also feel as if, so much of what this team's, what they have to unlock this year is the fact that, and I think it was Quinn Levy said it, that, the thing I worry about is Hill, it's not having somebody like Hill to make those clutch catches other than Travis Kelce. And I could go through year by year and give you a great play that Mahomes and Tyreek Hill made. Mahomes getting it down there, and Hill making an adjustment, seeing it, making the catch that put them in position to win games. Going back to the first year against Baltimore, to the Super Bowl, to the Buffalo game, it's that they will miss that element. And as much as I think they have a promising crew here, as much as I think Mahomes trusts them, it's hard to beat that kind of stuff. That's the kind of stuff that kills you. You're trying to defend the Chiefs. In the past was just like, the quarterback could throw the ball 75 yards down the field, and you had a receiver who was 5'8", 5'9", who could run 4.2 and jump over guys who were 5 inches taller than him and make a great play. And so if you're going to lose that, and somebody asked this on here as well, I forget who it was, would you rather have a 70-yard touchdown or a 70-yard drive, assuming that's 10 plays or more? Give me the drive every time. Because then you're controlling a lot more stuff. You're allowing your offensive line to be more effective. You're allowing your defense to be more effective. Your pass rushers, everything gets simpler. And that's how the Patriots did it for 20 years and won so many championships.
But that's how the Chiefs did it last year, though. Like last year, the Kansas City Chiefs they had the fewest drives in all the NFL, and they led the NFL in points per drive. Like that was what they were forced to do last year anyway, even with Hill
But then they stopped doing it against Cincinnati at the end.
Well, in the second half of that game, for sure. I mean, the first half of the game, they had basically 4 touchdown drives and 4 drives. If you squint, and Tyreek Hill bows in instead of out on that last play of the half. But like to your point, Jeff, like I think that's like the whole thing here, which is they were built to win by the 75-yard touchdown, right? And that has been how they've been great. And they were forced by NFL defenses to have the 10-play, 75-yard drive. Patrick Mahomes this preseason, I mean, we chart these things called big-time throws and turnover-worthy plays. And Pat last year had his lowest career mark in big-time throws by a lot because of the shells that they were facing. He only has 1 big-time throw this preseason. But what are they doing? I mean, they are winning those drives by 6 for 6 to 6 different receivers against Chicago. I think it was like 12 he had 19 pass attempts in the 2 possessions that they had the other day against the Commanders. Like this is an explosive offense in that, I mean, explosiveness by like 10-yard runs and 15-yard passes. This is not in a 75-yard touchdown pass offense anymore.
Well, it's not 75 in the air, right? Because you've always got guys on the back pedal. Unless you're going to run 4 goes and, you can put it out to one of the guys. I mean, we went round and round about the different ways that there are to try to probe the defense and try to beat the defense. But I mean, when you're going to play the cover 2, you got to really be able to rally and tackle. And there aren't 32 teams that can do that. So I do think that now when it's like, last year, and I'll be interested to see, we've talked about this a little bit too. I don't know if it was on Red, Gold, and Bold or if it was on the 2D, but the percentage of teams that are dropping 8, right, and only rushing 3, which is why I do think that they have to run the ball, which is what we're going to get to next here in a second. And I'm not upset, but I am questioning what they're going to be able to do running the ball, because I'm also quite sure that there's a lot of things Andy Reid's going to unleash that he's not showing right now. But I don't think 32 teams can drop 7 and all of them rally to the ball and tackle. And I think that's one of the rings. I don't think it was a coincidence that they went out and got 6'4" JuJu Smith-Schuster, or at 2 or 3 JuJu Smith-Schuster, 6'4" Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Jody Fortson was back at 6'6". You know, they got these bigger guys. They're going to try to run through arm tackles. You know, and Tyreek Hill would be a great guy, and he was a great guy to beat that as well with the underneath stuff. It looked different, right? But I think if you're constantly getting beat by guys catching, turning, and running through arms and up the field, and just if you're just taking 10 yards at a time, you know, that cover 2 era. Let's go back to that cover 2 era in 2002. You know what I remember about that from a Chiefs fan perspective? You know, Trent Green to Eddie Kennison on 17-yard outs, stealing. I mean, Kennison would put that foot in the ground, come out, steal, and Priest Holmes hammering away. Tony Gonzalez in the seams of the zone. I mean, that was it wasn't, you're right, Patrick Mahomes getting to show off the arm and go 75 yards. But they were a fantasy football wet dream as well, right? Like, so, you know, I think the Chiefs can be that. It is incumbent, is it not, Jeff, on Patrick Mahomes, though, to maybe be patient or to just, you know, not have to show off not have to be softball guy, right? Like we always joke about it. You don't have to throw the ball from the center field fence, throw your arm out and throw it clear over the backstop to impress the other guy's girlfriend. You know, sometimes just go ahead and hit the cutoff man and let's win the game.
Yeah, no, that's a big part of it. And you're an old-time Lakers fan, Showtime, the HBO, great show. I mean, what was the kryptonite for the Lakers for a long time? A Celtics team that was really physical, that would drag them into half-court games and beat them up. And that's what I think the Chiefs were for the past 4 years. That they were Showtime, and there's a lot of vanity that comes with being that way. You know, you like to show off things, to show off your arm, your speed. You want to dance and have fun. And there is a point that, and I was saying this back in 2018, 2019, that whatever is happening here, you know, with success that you're having success with, as Eric is saying, every team in the NFL is trying to figure out how to deal with that, how to defeat it. And so what everybody came up with was, let's rush 4 or 3, let's play coverage, let's make them work for it. And really the onus is on Mahomes to be able to accept that and to be able to work with the people he has in a way that he hasn't had to throughout most of his career. Now, I think he can do it because I think he's a phenomenal talent and he's proven a lot of people wrong at different junctures. But it's very hard to not want to throw a 100-mile-per-hour fastball or to go to the rim and dunk on somebody instead of shooting a mid-range shot. I mean, to have to, you know, as much as we talk about defense and whatever scheme you want to talk about it, defense is one thing. It's making people uncomfortable. It's about making people do things they don't want to do or play in ways they don't want to play. And so I definitely think the Chiefs have the resources and maybe in a disguised blessing, what happened in the second half of the AFC Championship game is the kind of motivation that can allow Mahomes to make that kind of transition far more easily than he would have if he was having success. He was going to have to do it sooner or later. Every great quarterback has to learn to do things differently. But I certainly feel like a big part of what they're going to do this year comes down to how patient he can be when he's facing these same defenses.
Eric, how about what Terry said? We put it up there. Surprised they don't do more screens and play action, right? Let's hold the play action because we're going to talk about the running part of the game, and that ties right into that. But the screen game, they were fantastic at that, right? Like Jamal Charles destroyed people with that. Is it just the caliber of running back that they have, or is there something else that they're doing? Did they just not get to it? And is that part of the equation to beating these defenses?
Yeah, I think this preseason they're probably not going to show anything if they were, but
should that be the game plan?
Yeah, and I mean, look, like Damian Williams is quite good as a receiver out of the backfield for this team. Like it doesn't require Marshall Faulk to sort of run those plays. So, you know, I think they're looking. I mean, and that's probably why they've gassed up Pacheco so much because they really are looking for what Jerick McKinnon offered a season ago, but probably can't offer for 17 regular season games in the playoffs, which is a running back who can catch the ball out of the backfield, make a man miss, have good contact balance. We did see that against the Bears in the red zone. That's just not who Clyde Edwards-Helaire is, right? It also is if you're going to throw a screen, like you think about the anatomy of a screen, it's offensive linemen sort of weaving around, the quarterback being able to see the running back, which I know this is a joke, but like Clyde is very small, being able to see the running back, throw the ball over the top, have it be caught, because I think like the worst part about a screen is when it's not complete. And we've seen a lot of plays to Clyde Edwards-Helaire that have not been complete in the first 2 years of his career. McKinnon is very smooth at that stuff. He's wonderful at it. We like the Denver game, the Week 18 game. I mean, that's as good of a play as a running back made for the Chiefs all the year last year. But I think that the issue with McKinnon is he can't stay healthy. Ronald Jones can't catch, right? So and he can't pass protect. So like he can't be in there for a lot of that other stuff. They're looking for a back to do that kind of stuff. I think it's personnel driven. I also think, I think it's personnel driven. I mean, Damian Williams is an extremely effective back. Kareem Hunt, when he was on this team, was catching screens and going 50 yards, right? Like, I think it's about personnel, and I think that that's why they drafted Edwards-Helaire, but, he has not been, what they thought he was supposed to be.
But it's also about play calling. When you want to run an effective screen, you have to get the first thing you have to get is a defensive lineman moving up the field.
Right.
And what teams realized when they were playing Mahomes is we're not coming back out of hell crazy. We're going to sit back and see what he's going to do. And we're going to see where he goes. Then we're going to make a move. And so if you're trying to run a screen, if people are just sitting there, regardless of whether they're reading or not, they're sitting in your lanes. It wasn't a screen they ran at the in the championship game when BJ Hill from the Bengals picked off Mahomes, the first interception he threw in the second half. But look how they rushed him. They kind of just came forward a little bit and backed off.
Well,
and it's hard to run stuff at that depth if defensive linemen are playing you that way.
Well, and I think to Jeff's point, we saw an increase not only in like I said, the drop 7, but the drop 8s, and 13% of the time it is. I think New England. I read somewhere that 13% of the time they dropped 8, right? And so if that's what Bill Belichick's doing, just as Andy Reid's seen what everyone else is doing, everyone else is looking at, okay, what's Bill doing here? And I think you'll see people copy it. And that comes back to your point, Jeff, about running the ball. I mean, if you're going to drop 8, you're probably in a super light bot. You're in dime, with 3 backers, with 3 defensive linemen, or maybe even 2, and you're blitzing a linebacker out of that, and you've got 6 or 7 defensive backs, and how you're playing that, and you're going to have to line up and run it. I mentioned the wide receivers that I think were part of the moves. I do think Ronald Jones, to Eric's point, it's not a mystery to them that he doesn't block well, and it's not a mystery to them that he doesn't catch well. They brought him in. It's one of the reasons why I'm not buying all the way into the Ronald Jones has been cut for 3 weeks narrative, because I think part of what they wanted him to do was just run the damn ball. Yep. And, yes, they're going to spend a lot of time trying to teach him to catch and make him a better pass blocker. You do that with everybody all the time. But they need to just be able to line up and punch somebody in the mouth. And I think, I was asked this on Sunday Sound Off, a show here in Kansas City on 41, and it was a listener question. Like, am I worried about the run game? I'm not worried about the run game because I still believe you throw to win, you run when you're winning. I still think that's it. Maybe you got to throw it differently. You don't just throw it right into coverage. But I do think that to your point, Jeff, everyone else in the league knows that too. And I think everyone else in the league knows that giving up 3 to Kansas City is a win. And so they're gonna let you truck it right down into field goal range. And then when the field shortens up and they got 8 guys dropped, it gets harder for even the great Patrick Mahomes to make something happen. And I do think that there's an element of you're going to have to punch somebody in the mouth and run the ball. And that's why Ronald Jones is here. Are you buying the Ronald Jones is out of town thing, Jeff?
Well, it's mystifying why they don't use him more. And maybe you're right. Maybe they're sitting there holding on to hope that we don't have to put him out there and run these plays and be more of a downhill team at this point in the year. We're going to catch people by surprise. I don't know. It's hard to buy into it. It's hard to see them keeping 4 running backs just because they're not using Ronald Jones. I mean, I think Gore's gone for sure.
Yeah, he's IR'd now. Yep.
Yeah. But the way that they've, even though Pacheco is, the shine's off him a little bit. I mean, when I was out there back in early July, early August, like he was running a lot with the first team. They got him in the first game with the first team and that first drive. McKinnon has a certain kind of skill set. To me, it's just a mixed bag of running backs. And what I don't understand is if you got this offensive line that is so good at run blocking, so big, so dominant, potentially dominant, I think that should be part of your game plan. And I'm going to be optimistic about that and hope that when they are seeing light boxes and seeing 2 deeps and quarters that they are going to be more open to that. But I think Eric's made this point a million times, and I agree with it. Like, the RPO is what's gotten them in trouble. It used to be their bread and butter. Now it's been what's gotten them in trouble. And if they're going to more downhill runs and allowing more traditional, conventional play action passing, I think it's going to open up a whole different dimension. But to do that, you have to be willing to run the football, not like 40 times a game,
right?
But if they're showing you a run look, you better run the football.
Yeah, you're not asking for the return of Marty Ball. Eric, we got into this on the program today, my radio show, about it. We're seeing a lot of RPOs in the preseason. Right now, part of that's because it's not new. Everyone in the league's seen it. Everyone's seen them run it. That almost, to me, is an advertisement that that's not what they're going to be when the season starts. I am holding out hope that with this big physical offensive line that they've got, that with Ronald Jones signing, with bigger wide receivers that ought to be better blockers, I think Sammy Watkins was a very good blocking wideout, that they're going to unleash the hounds at some point after they take a lead in a game. And we're going to see them really get power football. One of the things, we'll see if I'm right about this. I don't think you're going to see Nick Allegretti lining up at tight end all the time. But I was just asking about Allegretti, kind of fishing around about how the line, how the personnel on the line was going to be there. And Andy Reid seemed to light up about Allegretti. That said one of two things to me. One, they want to trade him because they like some of the guys, and he's selling. So they're going to try to trade him at cutdown day, which, everybody starts maneuvering on that. I don't think that's it. He talked about his versatility. He said he can handle center. He can handle guard. He said, he does a lot for us. He's our tight end and goal line. And I have this dream of Nick Allegretti reporting in on every, 2nd and 3, 3rd and 2. Here comes Allegretti. And late in games here, like I have this dream of Allegretti, wearing number 8 or something, right? And being, not even having to report in, because that's going to be their second time. He's going to be their Jason Dunn, and they're going to smash people in the mouth. Like, we should take everything they're doing now and assume that's not what they're going to run, right? Like, whatever it is, whether it's my Allegretti fantasy or something else, it's not going to look like what they're doing now. We know that.
Well, I do know that with Blake Bell out, right? So with Blake Bell's out for a while, that leaves them really without a blocking tight end that they really trust, right? And I do know that has been a conversation in the building for them about what to do at that position. But I think that you're probably right. Like, one of the biggest inefficiencies in the NFL is the fact that all 5 offensive linemen play almost every play in a perfect world. And you still have to dress 2 guys that really only play on like kickoff return and field goal extra point. There might be a situation where you look at, Noah Gray has looked better this year. Obviously Travis Kelce, and then you have Jody Fortson, who's probably going to make the team. You could probably get by without Blake Bell if your 6th offensive lineman plays tight end on early downs. Like, that's probably how to get around that roster inefficiency. If they do that, that's great. That means they could keep 4 tailbacks if they wanted to, or 6 wide receivers if they wanted to, if they only keep 3, tight ends. I think that might be what they do, because, again, like, I even think the non-RPO stuff helps them all around. Like, I think, and I said this on your show, like, I think getting an I formation, running play action, having Travis Kelce run a over route like they did against Chicago, like, they're making Travis Kelce get open against corners, right? Like, why don't you give him some layups like the Ravens do with Mark Andrews, right? Like, that's where I see an inefficiency in the offense.
What does Isaiah Pacheco bring to the table that they don't already have in Clyde Edwards-Helaire, in Jerick McKinnon, or in Ronald Jones? Now, I get that it could be a Ronald Jones for Pacheco. Jones is a bigger back, but I've all this preseason, like the Pacheco, I'm not at camp every day, right? And so the beat guys are, and I had this conversation with Sam McDowell, friend of the Red Gold and Bold podcast, by the way, columnist for the Kansas City Star, and he agreed. He said, "I'm saying the same thing." He goes, "I'm asking our guys." He's been at more practices than I have. But he said, "But I'm asking our beat guys, like, what am I missing? Why is everybody so big on this?" He must have had some good practices early, but I
running with the ones early.
He what?
He was running with the ones early. He was out there.
And I almost wonder if that's a scam to start creating the hype to then trade him at cut down day as well. But the biggest thing was Dave Tobe talked about, oh, yeah, we're going to feed him in the kick returns. I go, oh, they love him in the kick returns. You know, the other thing is he's wearing 10. And that seems, I think,
I think they're confused.
They gave him Tyreek Hill's number. Let's let it get in the rafters before we make it a sacred, number for the Kansas City Chiefs. But I'm not like, if they keep 4, fine. We know what it is now. Gore's out of the mix, so you know what it is. If they keep 3, I'm not convinced that Pacheco makes this team because I don't see what he brings that they don't already have. Jones brings their biggest back, their maybe their best downhill runner. Pacheco needs Andy Reid to scheme stuff up for him. All right?
He's faster. He's the fastest one of them, right?
Petro, I think you're on to Petro, you're on to something here, right? Which is that in the preseason, we have not seen Ronald Jones run with the first team offensive line. And look, in the playoffs last year, again, this is speaking to Andy Reid. We did not see Jerick McKinnon run the football for this offense until the playoff game against Pittsburgh. And that was a big bleep you to the entire league, right? Where that offense had struggled all year and it was a hammer. If we come out week 1 against Arizona and run Ronald Jones behind the first team offensive line with those holes and he averages 6 yards a carry, then we're going to come back and be like, okay, this is what the heck they were doing. Because to your point, your initial question, what does Isaiah Pacheco bring that none of these other guys do? It's nothing. It's just that McKinnon brings skill
he's faster, right? He is.
But like guy. McKinnon's plenty fast. He
loves speed, and he loves speed.
Yeah, but like I said this on Petro's show today, like Pacheco was like not graded well, and again, we're not gospel at PFF.
3.5. Forget about and I agree. You're not, as much as you guys act like it at PFF, you're not gods, okay? But I don't even need
right there.
I don't even need and I think this is of note too. Yeah, his vision issues. Why he's so fast.
He was bad at Rutgers. He was bad at Rutgers.
The offensive line sucked at Rutgers. I'm like 3.4 yards per carry. I don't need an advanced mathematics degree to know that that's, no offense, Eric, to know that that's not that good. And there was a reason for it. And we saw it in this game. There was a wide open hole and he barreled behind the fullback into all the traffic. I mean, he does not, at least based on that play, and we haven't seen him much, he doesn't see the field well.
Let me put this out here. Am I the only person who remembers when they drafted McCole Hardman? Everybody was saying, this guy is not a real receiver, but he's really, really fast.
Right.
And we'll teach him how to be a receiver. I guarantee you that's how they're looking at Isaiah Pacheco. And this guy's really, really fast.
Agreed. And that's why they took him in the 7th round, though, which they'll cut a 7th rounder. Right? Let's talk about the cuts. We're going to get to the cuts later. Let's do it now.
I mean, Devin Key last year was the cat's ass for the first, preseason.
He wasn't out there with the first string defense.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was early on. Yes, he was. And that's what had everybody on him. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
And that was, we all see this. I mean, like that happens in every camp, right? Like,
and who was on the team instead? Armani Watts, right?
And Dirty Dan.
Yeah, I mean, there they were, and I think Ronald Jones, to Eric's point, the less we see him against the ones, the more play with the ones, the more I think he's on the team because we know what you can do. Like,
who's your kick returner then?
Well, maybe they're going down Eric Eager lane and going. We're done taking it out from 9 yards deep.
I don't know if Dave Tobe was down for that.
No, I think if he does make it, that's why he makes it. Is they're like, okay. Well, but I don't think it's because they went. He's going to be part of the run game. What do you see from him? I
think he's fast. I think that's all you have to see. Look, I know Andy well enough, and I've seen this act long enough to know that if you give him a fast guy who he thinks he can do something with, he's going to fall in love in a hurry. And so I'm not saying Pacheco is going to be the next Brian Westbrook, but he likes those kind of players. I think with Jamal Charles, he likes fast guys who are small, who he can do different things with. That's what I see the value in. Now, it may not appear until down the road, but I think that's what's keeping him around and giving him opportunities.
Can they get Pacheco to the practice squad?
I don't think so. Not now.
Because of what he's put on tape, or because of the hype train that's gone on in the Kansas City media?
Probably both.
Really? There's a general manager that's going to go, The Kansas City Star says Pacheco's shining in camp, and they're going to sign him because of that?
I guarantee you Ryan Poles will snatch him up in a heartbeat. I promise you that.
Which, by the way, given so far what's happened in Chicago is the biggest indication that he sucks.
Yeah. Well,
yes.
I mean, I could see him being like, who's the guy in the Colts? Naeem Hines. I could see him being that kind of player for them. Or even an Austin Eckler type player. I could see him being that.
Right. And maybe they're turning over a new stone. What running back for Andy Reid has ever been that? What running back has ever been a guy where I bring him in on passing downs? Like this is the case.
Brian Westbrook got started.
Well, and this is the case against Ronald Jones as well. Andy Reid, and I think sometimes to a fault, Spencer Ware was a thumping.
Kendrick West was that.
Well, but Spencer Ware was a thumping tailback at LSU that just pounded the line. They tried to make him a fullback in Seattle. They cut him. The Chiefs signed him, practice squatted him, and then when they played him, he's catching the football.
He was everywhere, right?
He was everywhere.
Right.
Yeah. So and so I think Ronald Jones may all of a sudden be better because you got maybe Eric Bieniemy and the offensive coaches can teach him to catch and block more. But my point is, at least when I've been watching Andy Reid up close, and by my recollection, like Deuce Staley didn't just run it and then somebody else caught it in Philly. They all ran it and they all catch it. He seems to bring them in there, wants it to be one guy and run him into the ground, and then the next guy comes in and he uses the next guy.
Even Shady McCoy, right? Shady McCoy was like Shady McCoy was kind of a transitional back his first year, but once he became the starter, he was in every down. Yeah. He was everything. I mean, like you're right. I think, and even they've never platooned backs here in Kansas City either. Like even the Super Bowl year was, this is a Shady McCoy game, or this is a Damian Williams game. It was, and even last year, the Raiders game was a Darrell Williams game, and this game was a Clyde game, or like even Le'Veon Bell.
I even object to that. I think it's more so somebody was hurt, and that made it a Darrell Williams game.
Well, sure, but they commit to a back for a whole game. I mean, you remember the Cleveland playoff game in 20 where Clyde was hurt, and everybody was like, "Oh, are they going to we're going to get something out of Le'Veon Bell?" And Darrell Williams is the back the whole game, right? Yeah. Here's some data on Pacheco that is interesting, right? So in 2020 and 2021, among running backs who eventually made it to the NFL. So this is not how good was he as a college. This is his college stuff, but only compared to running backs who made it in the NFL. He was in the second percentile of running backs in missed tackles forced per carry, meaning of every 100 running backs that made it in the league, only one was worse than him, right?
Okay.
When you look at missed tackles forced per catch, he was in the 15th percentile. So among 100 running backs that made it into the NFL, only 14 were worse at breaking tackles after the catch. So this isn't even like Rutgers' bad offensive line. This is, we threw the guy the ball in space. How well did he break tackles? And this isn't even like PFF grade. This is just data associated with that. His PFF grading was also bad. That's hard to work with. He also is only in the 14th percentile, what's called breakaway rate, which was basically the percentage of your runs that become long gainers, right? Stuff that, because I think like when we think about the Chiefs offense,
why do you think they drafted him though? Why do you think they drafted him?
I mean, it's a 7th round pick.
I think
oh, you throw a dart at the board. We got to take somebody.
I think you're both right. First of all, they had 10 picks, right? And he was the very last one. And 6th and 7th rounders, you guys know this. 6th and 7th rounders are as much about, we don't want to have to outbid somebody for them on the college free agent markets. Like the real board, the guys that are different, the guys that you're like, okay, I really think this guy's a player. And somewhere at the end, towards the end of the 3rd round, and in a great year, maybe the beginning of the 7th, but more likely the 5th round, right? There's like probably 5 rounds of real guys. And then the 6th and 7th rounds, they're no different than the 8 guys that you're going to sign as college free agents. It's just your point. Why they draft them? The 40 time. 100%. You're absolutely right. That's why Andy Reid went, give me the fastest guy on the board, right? Like that, you're absolutely right. But the question is that enough to keep him? That's why they drafted him and said, we don't want to screw around negotiating it, against another team. Is that enough to keep him? And I don't think it is.
Well, if
alone,
Ronald Jones is
on
not
its own.
running the ball in preseason, and we all know what Clyde Edwards-Helaire is, and McKinnon gets hurt, like I think you got to keep the guy. I think
That's why
everybody
I
else in the
asked-
room
That's
has
why I
got
asked,
flaws too.
could you get him to the practice squad?
I don't think you can. I don't think at this point, no. I don't think you could.
Eric? I say yes. I say you can get him to the practice squad.
Yeah, I think you can too. And like the reason is there are veteran running backs that can help a team out that are available every single day, right? So, like Kenyon Drake is available right now to be had as a free agent running back that just got cut. There are plenty of these backs that are available. I think, I think what they did is they drafted a guy and they said he's got really good speed. Let's give him a chance. And right now, the interesting training camp and preseason, the pertinent information isn't necessarily how well somebody does, especially for contending teams. It's how much they're being used. And I think a lot of times we over correct for that, right? So it's not that like Ronald Jones is average 1 yard a carry or what, actually less than that. It's that he's not being used. So we immediately go and be like, oh, he's bad, right? It's not that Pacheco has been like efficient in practice or super good. It's that he's out there to begin with Patrick Mahomes. And that was the pertinent information. But maybe the Chiefs are saying, look, we took this guy who was a very fast player out of Rutgers that people undervalued, right? If he was better than a 2 percentile tackle breaker, he's a 5th round pick, a 4th round pick with that speed. But since he's like, look, we might get this guy into so much space, it doesn't even matter if he can't break tackles. He might be, and so I think that what they wanted to do is test that hypothesis, knowing, right, that they have plenty of data on McKinnon. They have plenty of data on Ronald Jones. They have plenty of data on even Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So the Isaiah Pacheco thing is just like, this is like something we actually have to use training camp to figure out. And I think a lot of us, and myself included, I fall in this category. We sort of maybe overcorrected to that experiment as signal as to how they were going to act during the regular season. That's a thought. I don't know if that's necessarily true.
I think he's got Carlos Hyde written all over him. I can't argue. If he had been here for 3 years, I would say I could see the thinking of that. The guy's been here since what, March?
You're talking
and
about
now he's like, he didn't have to practice. Talking about Ronald Jones, yeah. So he didn't have to practice or do anything in training camp. We're not even talking about the game. We're talking about the practices. Like, no one is talking about this guy doing anything anywhere. We're acting like, okay, here he comes week 1. Look out. Earl Campbell's coming down the pipe.
Settle down, Allen Iverson. All right? Calm down. Talking about practice like that.
Yeah.
I think it will be interesting. And I would love it if Pacheco is going to become a Todd McNair or, this third down, Austin Eckler type of guy. I think it'd be great, but it'd be a new leaf. It'd be Andy Reid doing something different from how he likes to do it. I think that would be for sure. Do we have concerns, Jeff, with JuJu Smith-Schuster and the knee? Does this bother you that already battling injuries when he's basically battled injuries for 2 years?
Yeah. Yeah, as much as he's done in training camp, and he's been, from what I understand, the most impressive pass catcher out there. The guy looks like Rob Gronkowski in pads right now. He is so big, and maybe I just never saw him in person, but he looks like he's pushing about 230 out there. And so, yeah, when you start having sore knees in practice, I start getting a little bit concerned about that, given his injury history. I think if he's able to stay healthy, he's a huge addition to this offense, again, in the red zone, intermediate passing game, a guy who can catch short passes and break tackles and be a grinder for you as a possession guy. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's like if you did you see him in training camp? He was huge.
Yeah, I think part of it's wearing the single digit.
Oh, so if you're a slender guy, you should make it look slender.
Well,
but the nine's expanding. You're weighing too much. Weighing too damn much.
Have you ever seen a fat ass like me wear a quarterback?
It's like Jadavian Clowney out there running around.
You need 2 numbers to hide your fatness, right? Like, look how big does Carlos Dunlop look? You're like, oh my God. Whatever, like in college, now we're seeing it in the pros, defensive linemen wearing single digits. You're like, oh Lord, who ate the defensive end, right? Like, so I think that's part of it. I don't doubt you. No, I did not look. I think when I was up there, was JuJu already out? He was already out with the knee.
Was he?
So I did
Soren,
not.
you got to throw out these Steve Cashman and Michael Sipes.
I already have.
Okay.
Thanks for following, but just to before you.
Yeah, you got to throw Jeff a little love.
Did I not put both of these up already?
I think you
already
did.
put both of these up.
Okay.
I put everyone up that it's a compliment to Jeff or myself.
Love that.
All our friends are watching right now. That's right.
By the way, I do love this one. R.I.P. Jared Lorenzen.
Am I wrong? Go look at video of him. He looks
big. He looks big. And
wait a minute. Are we saying muscular or fat ass?
No, like he's heavy. I don't know. It could be muscle. It could be
heavy like me or heavy like you, Jeff.
He's big. I'm 230. He looks like he's like 235, 240. He looks sizable. I could see him like 60 yards down the field. Like, who's that guy? Who's that linebacker running routes?
So you're he's gone. Who was the Ohio State wideout that went to the Chargers?
David Boston.
Yeah. He's a world's strongest man his way out of the position.
Yeah, because he hasn't played in a preseason game yet, right? You haven't actually seen him on the field.
No,
he played week 1.
So the point to, like, are we concerned? That was the line of the question.
Yeah, I'm concerned.
I am, but I'm not. I am from the standpoint that he's not healthy, and I think he's going to be hurt off and on all year at best, and that's why he got a $3 million base. Like, I always hear. I had this right when I went round and round with Sam McDowell. And Eric, I'll let you answer. But he kept talking about the running back. Well, they didn't go get him with the running back, and I'm like, they used a first rounder on Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He's like, he's not good. Okay, so then they spent $1 million on Ronald Jones. What do you care if Ronald Jones isn't any good? Like, it's not killing you. Well, a lot of times, like, how good do they think a guy is? Well, how much are they paying him?
Right.
They gave JuJu $3 million. Now they gave the chance to make it up to 10. Right? They think, hey, if you play all the time, you're a $10 million guy. And we'll give you that if you play, but you're not. They gave Valdez-Scantling 10, 10, and 10. It's at least like, 15 or 16 that he's definitely going to get. That I think that's of note on that. So I'm not concerned from the standpoint that I actually think that Justin Watson's good. I actually think that Jody
Sky Moore's good.
Tip of the cap to Herbie Teope. Of the Kansas City Star, beat guy, friend of the pod. He has been on. He gets grief in the media tent for being like Jody Fortson's agent. Like, people like, have you signed the new contract for him? But Herbie has always said, like, he thinks the guy's a player, and he certainly made Herbie look good this past week. I don't think that I think they realized, and even Kelsey's number as a receiver is very affordable. He's expensive as a tight end, but he really is a glorified wideout, right? He's not even that expensive. And they said, we got the
huge
guy.
Edge to have on that team as a tight end. Huge.
Oh, absolutely. But I'm saying from a price standpoint, most teams don't pay their tight end anything, but they got some overpriced $16 million wideout. Right. Well, he produces. He gets it done for you. And I think they know. We got Andy Reid, we got Patrick Mahomes, we got other guys. We'll spread it around. When he's there, great. He's worth $10 million. When he's not, we're only having to pay him $3 million. That's so I'm not worried about it. Are you, Eric?
No. I mean, the fact of the matter is, the perfect case scenario for the Chiefs is for JuJu to be pretty good for a short amount of time, and for Sky Moore and McCole Hardman possibly and MBS to take over that role, and for them to move on from JuJu, right? Like, that's the perfect case scenario for him to bring a veteran presence in to get this thing off the ground. And then, and even like, I don't even think about Hardman that way either, because Hardman's on a contract as well. But like, if at the end of the season, the Chiefs' best 3 wideouts are Sky Moore, MVS, and Justin Watson, and it's because they outplayed JuJu and McCole Hardman, they're in a great spot, aren't they? Because those guys are under team control. They're inexpensive, relatively speaking. And, again, it's sort of like when the Patriots were thinking about deciding between Mac Jones and Cam Newton last year, I'm like, if both guys are equal, you stick with the guy you have control over money-wise, right, which was Mac. Because if Cam blows up, there's risk on both sides. If he's great, you got to pay him. If JuJu has a 1,500-yard year, I mean, he's not coming back for 10. He's coming back for 15 to 20. And like,
so you guys don't think JuJu's the best receiver in the room right now?
I think he is right now. I think
Okay.
he's right now. But I think that the Chiefs probably believe the Chiefs are hoping that Sky Moore, MVS, Justin Watson, maybe even McCole Hardman, because he doesn't have the injury history, are all better than him at the end of the year. Like, I think that that's the hope.
That's a huge bet. That's a huge
I think if you have a room of girls that are 8.8 to 5 girls, 8.8 to 9.1, and you get to go out with all of them, and the 9.1 says, I'm not going, and you get to take 4, 9, and 8, 9, and 8, 9, and an 8, 8 out, are you sweating that the 9-1 went home? I'm not.
Well, I think this is more like a 9-1 to 7-2 room.
That's the point. I don't.
I still think
JuJu's the only guy in the room who's had more than 90 catches in a season. None of the other guys have done that.
3 years ago.
He still did it. He still did it.
I agree.
Sky Moore hadn't been around, but the other 2 guys have been around for 3 years too.
But if he never does it again, he wasn't that guy except for 1 year. It didn't warrant paying him for 3 years ago what he was, or throwing him the ball like he's the guy from 3 years ago.
Yeah, because he can't stay healthy.
Right. And you know, those, when you're not healthy, you're slowing down. You're not as good as you were. Those injuries take a toll. That's what I think. Let's move on to Jody Fortson, because I know we got to get rolling here. You're on the bandwagon. Is this going to be the second tight end? Is this, or was he just Mr. Open against backups or against non-scheme defense, Jeff?
Second tight end. I've said it before. He and Noah Gray are redundant to me. Like, pick one, go with it, and then if Blake Bell overcomes his hip injury, let him be your blocking tight end. I just feel like Fortson has more chemistry with Mahomes. Mahomes has more trust in his ability to make plays. He's a former receiver, and so you can see the body control. He's got some motivation with the way his career has gone, being a camp darling and then finally making the team last year and then getting hurt. So I think of all the guys who could complement Kelsey, he's the one that makes the most sense to me. So yeah, I won't drive the bandwagon, but I'll be in the front seat of it for sure.
Eric?
Yeah, I mean, he's something that they have lacked in the red zone for a number of years. We saw it against the Chargers last year. You know, he certainly has that big body, the ability to box somebody out that, you know, we've all wanted a Chiefs receiver to do. And I agree with Jeff. I think he, could be that second option. I think that the key is just to keep him healthy, right? Like I said this last week on the show, tight ends of that size, that kind of stature have don't last that well in the league because of the wear and tear. If the Chiefs can manage that, I think he'd be a great member of the roster, to be honest with you.
Let's talk about George Karlaftis. You ready to buy in that this is an impact player, Jeff?
The play that I like that he's made in the preseason that really jumped out at me was the one he made against Washington when he ran through the tight end and the right tackle was trying to help on him. And he stayed with the play and then made the sack after someone else, pushed the quarterback back towards him. To me, that showed what he's about, what his game is about. I still want to see him against premier left tackle. I want to see him against Rashawn Slater. I want to see him against Trent Williams, Tristan Wirfs, against that caliber of offensive tackle where you can't just push him back on the quarterback. You got to make some moves, use your hands. But I love the energy and I love the spirit. And again, that play to me was that's an impressive play. I don't care if you're getting blocked by second team guys. You run through 2 guys, get to the quarterback, you're showing something.
Yeah, I agree. Eric, you're on board?
Yeah, I think there's a bar that Chiefs defensive ends have not been able to clear for a couple of years, which is reliably beat bad tackles. And there are a lot of bad tackles in this league. The offensive line, play in the NFL is characterized less by elite players and more by hey, this guy's coming up off the practice squad this week because of injury. Can you get 10 pressures against that guy? I think Karlaftis is reliably that already. To Jeff's point, can he beat Rashawn Slater? I think that question matters for sure, but I think it's secondary to can you win the matchups you're supposed to win, because that's where the Chiefs have failed in recent years. So I like it. I think Dunlap needs to be managed this year as far as his workload. I think he's going to be like a 30 snap a game guy. I think Frank Clark has to be better. obviously, than what he's been. But Karlaftis is I think, going to give him a down payment on a pass rush this year that they haven't had for a few years now.
Are we all in on this nickname, Furious George?
I like that.
I like it a lot.
I like that too.
Right.
I
George
think
of the jungle.
Yeah, it's pretty strong. It's pretty strong. I love the motor, and I think if Chris Jones is collapsing things on the inside, he's going to clean some stuff up. And I said this today with Eric, and I said it yesterday with Sam. I think that kind of energy. I hope he gets a couple of those coverage sacks early, and it lights a fire into the ass of Frank Clark and Chris Jones to go hard all the way and to not give up. Because there are times that you see those two, they've settled into their, we're gonna okay, I'm gonna hold you. We're okay. We'll see where the ball goes. And if that kid's, roaring around and they look up and it's like, the crowd is roaring with 5 sacks in 4 games for Karlaftis, and Jones has got 1.5 and Frank Clark's got 0.5. I would hope that would motivate you.
You know who he reminds me of? And I'm not, I'm saying he's this. Trey Hendrickson.
From the Bengals?
From the Bengals.
Yeah,
that's who he plays
I wanted
like.
the Chiefs to sign last year.
Yeah.
Instead of the guard. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's not as long though.
No.
Right.
No.
That's
but the way he plays.
Yeah. I thought Hendrickson would be a target for them because of his length and Spagnuolo's love of long defense ends. You don't like the Tamba Hali comp?
I think it's fair, but I think he's a better athlete than Tamba was at this stage.
He's not.
Tamba was a hand of the ground type dude. Karlaftis seems like he's more fluid.
I mean, he spent most of his career standing up on the edge. That was the big knock.
But I'm saying he came into college as a down lineman.
Yeah.
Came out of college as a down guy.
Yeah, but then made the transition. The one thing I hope he has is Tamba Hali's passion for learning the hand fighting, right? Mm-hmm. Because he got into the martial arts and the getting guys off, and he made himself a lot better player, right? That's what I hope he has. I hope he has that passion to go get it done. All right, surprise cut or keep. What anyone you want to say is out or in, Jeff, that you think is going to surprise people a little bit?
I think it's a surprise. I think he's played his way out. Darian Kennard. We were sitting here talking about him possibly being a right tackle option.
Yeah,
whatever it was 4 months ago.
Who was that?
That wasn't. I know it wasn't me. The 3 of us on here. It wasn't me.
Yeah, the other 2 of us would like to hide right now.
I was never on that train. So, but yeah, the point to end this fast, he ain't making the team.
Can we strip all SEC coaches or media, or I don't even know who voted, but the SEC offensive lineman of the year? Like, what collection of dumbasses handed that down?
It's a different level of play.
I will suggest this. I will suggest that you never know. Is he banged up? Are we not seeing him at his best and he's trying to play through it? I mean, I don't think that's the case because I think they would have already IR'd him because they've got other guys and they would love to just, every team loves to get a guy with a semi-legit injury, IR him for the year and let him get better. And they haven't done that. So I wonder, but I don't know who on God's earth was how this guy was voted. Right? Wasn't that the award he won? Offensive lineman of the year in the SEC?
The SEC is no joke, folks.
Allegedly.
Just ask him. Yeah.
Surprise cut or keep. Eric, what do you got?
I'm actually going to go with Derek Nottie. I think I think the Sheldon signing is legitimate. I also think that Nottie played like shit last year, and I also think that he's not on a deal that you can't cut. Right? It's a 1 year, that was his contract year was last year, and he played poorly enough where the only team that wanted him was the team that drafted him. And yeah, I mean, if you go Shelton, Treshawn Wharton, Chris Jones.
I don't know. I think they go 8 or 9 on the defensive line. I think he's still around. I love that. I mean, that's a bold pick, right? Mine's not bold. Mine's Isaiah Pacheco because he's become the camp darling. I think that's the guy that gets it. I think Kennard is gone or IR'd or gone and then practice squatted. But I mean, now he was brutal in one-on-one.
Oh, Kennard will make the practice squad. I guarantee you that much. If they want him back, he'll be out there.
Everybody likes to throw a draft pick on the practice squad if you can, But I'll give him credit. If you cut a 5th rounder, which they did last year, Cornell Powell they cut. And I don't think anybody's complaining about Creed Humphrey and Nick Bolton. That worked out. I think a mark of a good general manager is, and here Steve said this. I was on the Colin Saunders being cut early on, but he's actually played really well. He always does. I mean, I love him. He looks like Kung Fu Panda out there. I love the build of the guy, but he's always hurt. So no, I don't. I would have said Saunders early, but I'm not saying Saunders now. To me, I think boy, I love Derek Nottie. I wish I had something super sexy like that. Pacheco's the best. I mean, I don't like hearing that, but
Well, I don't like it either. Like I like Derek Nottie, but like I think there is a little bit of, they just brought him along again because of his history with the team and not necessarily anything but that, right?
Yeah.
He didn't play well last year.
Yeah, no, I agree. All right, that's going to do it for us here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. Back at it again next week. We are up and running each and every week. If you're catching us via the podcast, remember you can be part of the stream Tuesdays at 9 p.m. So for Jeff Chadiha. By the way, if you're in here on the stream, go ahead and hit that like, the subscribe. Does great wonders for us. The love buttons. Those are all good things for us. We appreciate it. We appreciate everybody joining us on the podcast, and it won't cost you nothing, but it'll help us out immensely. So thank you very much. So for Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network and NFL.com, that's where you can catch his great work. Eric Eager is at Pro Football Focus, PFF.com. You can catch my radio show at 810WHB.com. For all the guys, Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us